Welcome to the Yoked Podcast, where we talk about all things entrepreneurship, real estate, and partnerships. I'm your host, Travis Hall, alongside my co-host and wife, Ingrid. Together, we've been in real estate for nearly 2 decades, always as an equally yoked husband and wife team.
Join us each week as we bring you a new episode. And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, follow along, and welcome to this week's episode of
The Yoked Podcast. What's up, and welcome to this week's episode of the Yoked Podcast. I'm Travis, this is Ingrid, and we are excited today because we are going to be talking about all things buying investment properties.
Yes.
And why you should do it.
I can't wait, honestly.
I know.
This is our second time recording this episode because of our audio issues. And so we are well practiced and ready.
We're yoked to learning and getting better.
We're committed to being yoked to learning. And we have sparkling water, which is new on tap here. Thank the Lord, because the old stuff. Yes,
we love working here. It's so great.
Love working here. The old stuff tastes like cleaner. I'm delighted today. It's really yummy. Also, happy birthday week.
It is. It is my birthday week.
I know. That's so exciting.
The big 3-8.
Oh, that's right.
I know. Still not 40,
actually,
but getting closer.
Late 30s.
Late. I'm still in the mid 30s.
I don't know.
I'm rounding down.
Yes.
Anyway, let's get into it. Let's talk about why people should buy a property.
Yes, I get to play interviewee or interviewer.
And we get asked this a lot. This is probably like the number one question that people like kind of, just because they know we're in real estate. We do this, we love it, it's our passion. And so we talk about this a lot. And so we kind of like, thanks to you, we put together some actual
notes that we're going to refer to.
Otherwise this podcast could go on for 2 hours. And so, it's short form.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to interview me.
Yes, I get to be the interviewer, which is exciting. But also we get asked this and, hey, how do you do a flip?
Yeah, we get
probably every week. And that's part of coming up with a podcast, is that this is a great way for us to answer some of those questions, give some light advice in a short form that kind of helps people dip their toe in. So that's what today's is we're going to go over 5 ways to buy your first rental. Very exciting. We've done every single way of doing this, which is also exciting. So let's start first just by telling the audience why you should start investing now. We are at the beginning of 2025. It's a difficult market. We are in a very expensive area of the U.S. to buy performing properties and investments. So why would somebody start right now?
Yep, great question. And so this is high level, right? So it's all math.
Yeah, if you want the nitty gritty, we'll go to coffee.
Yes, as always, I do like coffee. So I love a cortado, I should say. That's my favorite.
Starbucks just launched that cortado.
It's so good. Or a flat white with an extra shot, quad shot flat white. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about. So I think there's 3 reasons. There's way more, but in this podcast, there are 3 main high-level reasons why I think you should buy a real estate investment property. It doesn't mean it has to be in Denver, but just in general. Number 1 is real estate appreciates. Yes, it goes like up and down, up and down, up and down if you zoom in. But if you zoom out, it's up and to the right.
Yeah, it's an appreciating asset.
An appreciating asset. First and foremost, you get to touch and feel it. It's like it's not like a stock where you're hoping that someone that's playing puppeteer up top makes the thing go up in value. It's a real, actual thing, hard asset. So that's number 1. It appreciates. Number 2, ideally, someone else is paying for it because, again, we're talking maybe rental real estate.
Yeah.
Someone is renting the property from you, and ideally, that rent covers the mortgage. It is hard to find right now. In the higher price markets like this, like it is difficult to find a cash flowing rental. It is, as far as your normal ways of buying something. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about creative ways.
And then the last one, number 3, and I feel like this is actually the biggest reason why people buy real estate, like collectively.
And worth its own podcast.
It is. It is easily worth its own podcast. It has multiple books written about it. But it's the tax benefits. Rental real estate has a ton of tax benefits.
Tell us just one.
One, the biggest, easiest one is it depreciates. And so it again, It is a thing. A house goes up in value, it appreciates, but on paper, it goes down in value because it's getting bore out. And so you get to depreciate it and write it off on your taxes.
I love that.
And it's just a gift. It really is. So
great reasons.
Appreciates, somebody else pay for it, and it is a depreciable tax asset.
I love it. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about strategies. If somebody came to you and they said, okay, I'm going to start my portfolio this year. This is the year I do it. What are just some like 5 ways that you would say, here's the ones that you should explore to go actually obtain that first piece of real estate?
Right. And so number one, it's not the easiest, but the one that most people do if they want to venture into the world of real estate investments is simply to move out of their house, keep it, and go buy a new primary. And so who is that? Somebody that owns a piece of property that owns it outright, or they have a mortgage on the property, they live there. And again, the math has to work. It just has to, that's the key component for all of this. Disclaimer, the math has to work. But you leave your property, you move out, you get a renter in, and then you go buy a new primary. The benefit is that the cost of entry is lower because you don't have to put this massive down payment on the next property. You can follow the Dave Ramsey method and put as much down as you want, but you could do as little as you can. You can put 3% down, you can put 5% down on your next single family home. We did this multiple times.
Yes. And with all of these, there's asterisks and, parens, but I will say,
again, this is high level.
Yes. And I love this one because the way we did it was utilizing the BRRRR method, which is basically buying under market value properties and then force appreciating them. So fixing them up. Like all of our first properties, garbage, okay, full of cat urine,
gross.
Hoarders. You name it. We have seen it. They're disgusting. But the great thing about that is that if you're willing to put in a little sweat equity, you have a little DIY bone in your body, you can do it over time. And then you are going to be able to pull equity out if you want to via HELOC. All these other things, we're getting in the weeds, but it is a great way to be able to do those things while also providing yourself a place to live.
Right. Exactly. So it's straightforward, but move out and go buy a new house, but keep it. Don't sell it.
Don't sell it. Just rent it. We try to get everyone to not sell their house.
Even as realtors, people are like, hey, what should we do? I'm like, well, can you keep it?
Can you keep it?
Can you keep it first? It doesn't always work because, houses are expensive. And so it's hard to do that sometimes. But
yeah, sometimes you need the equity, but.
For sure.
All right. Next one.
Mm-hmm.
Saving up a large down payment.
Yes. Not as sexy or fun, but for some people, this is like the exact way to do it. It's like, I have a high paying job, or I just inherited a bunch of money. I'm just going to go buy a house, but buy a rental and just pay the down payment. It's usually 20 to 25%. And I just get a loan for that. You can go get a DSCR loan, a debt service coverage ratio loan. And the reason we like those is because it's just based on the property. It's like it rents for X, the property costs this is how much your loan is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not based, you don't have to give them all your bank statements and your child's, blood type and all the things.
Seriously.
It's just based on the actual property. And so you still need a pretty good sized down payment. You need 25% down, maybe 30% for a DSCR. But if you make the decent chunk of money, or you live super frugally and you just got cash just burning a hole in your pocket, yeah, go buy yourself a rental property. A good example is our good friend Josiah. He like a property like that.
That's true.
You don't have to buy it in your market. You either buy for cash flow or you buy for appreciation, right?
Yes.
You can do both, but they're hard to buy both. One of them is the primary. And so like they're in West Texas, and selling these turnkey properties that are cash flowing really, really well. The appreciation is going to be slower just because it's not in a super fast appreciating area. But for $25,000, you can go buy yourself a couple $100 of cash flow a month,
which is incredible.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So,
and we do have clients that have done this. Truly, it's remarkable. They just save, and then are willing to make a short-term sacrifice and live somewhere not as sexy. That way, in 3 to 5 years, they can go buy their next one. Yeah. And it's impressive. Every time, we see somebody do that, I'm like, you guys are impressive. I love it. All right, number 3, the good old house hack.
A good old house hack. It's one of my favorites.
Walk us through that one.
Yeah. So a house hack, it's in, just like you said, buy, rehab, rent, or renovate, rent, repeat. Yeah. And then refinance. You said that, and we've done that. We did it before. It was called BRRRR. Thanks, Brandon Turner, for creating it. The acronym. It's great. But house hack is similar. It's like, simply put, and I'll tell you a story around house hacking for us that we did. Good old eighth place. But a house hack is where you buy a property, and maybe it's a 5-bedroom house, and you just rent out some of the rooms. You rent out the basement. You rent out something, or you buy a multifamily. You buy a duplex, which is 2 units. You buy a triplex, which is 3, or a fourplex, that is 4 units, and then you live in one and rent out the others. Simply, house hack. You're just renting out a chunk or a section of the property.
Yeah. And I think a good thing to remember is that you can do this with a duplex, obviously, where you have, one entire side for yourself. That's what we did.
Yeah.
If you like privacy, or you're growing a family, something like that, great option. Otherwise, renting by the room can be extremely lucrative. Mm-hmm. And it's a great workaround.
It's called co-living.
Co-living. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have a new term for everything. But I'll also say that a lot of some of the reasons I hear about, hey, I don't want to do co-living or house hacking because of all of the rules, or stuff like that. A lot of those don't apply when it's your primary residence.
True.
So if you're a single woman and you want to try this method, you don't have to rent to men.
Yeah, you don't have to.
No, because it's your primary. So you can actually discriminate against a protected class because it is yours. So think about that. I mean, there's some workarounds and rules so that
the fair housing rules don't necessarily apply the same when it's your house, is what you're saying.
Exactly. We always advocate for following fair housing. But certainly when it's your primary, I think this is a great way to do it. And one of those stopgaps I hear often doesn't apply.
And it's a great way, like for us, we did it because it was a fast way to build the portfolio. 2 birds, 1 stone. We got our primary and a rental in the same transaction.
Yep.
That's why we liked it.
Yep.
But so let me tell you a quick story around 8th place.
Okay.
So our very first house hack was a duplex. And I just love this story because it's just the power of real estate. When we first started looking at it, it was a big duplex. It was like 5,000 square feet, 2,500 square feet per side. It was big. And it was expensive at the time. This was like 12 years ago. It was $350,000 on Craigslist. It was not on the market. It was on Craigslist.
Remember closing and he showed up in a tracksuit to sign papers with an attorney?
I love that.
Sweet.
It was suede.
Like velour.
Yeah, baby blue. But anyway, so when we first started looking at this property, it was like, well, I need a deal. Like, this isn't a deal. And so, at first we were like, no, we can't do it. It was the most expensive duplex, listed in the whole area, like by a long shot.
Yes.
I think the next closest was like 310, like years ago, months ago, I should say. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't like it at first, but then what we did is we kind of had this pivot of like, well, maybe we should look at it from a buying rent standpoint.
Yes.
And so we changed our lens on the numbers and how we were looking at it. And then it became a no-brainer. We realized that it was under market rent. One side, she mentioned hoarders. One side was a hoarder house, and they were severely under market rent. And even those two, granted, we were going to live in one side, but the two of those would easily cover half the mortgage. Mm-hmm. And so if we could just bring them up a little bit, one side was 50% of rent. And so we knew that we could get half of our mortgage covered, which is awesome. So we bought it. We moved into one side. We lightly fixed it up. We thought we fixed it up a lot, but it was learning. But we fixed it up. And over the course of 8 months, the hoarders ended up leaving. They didn't want to stay. We got rid of all their stuff. They had 5 30-yard dumpsters of stuff, which was remarkable.
And honestly, and I know this is a tangent, but let's pause because they had kids where the kids had really wanted the parents to be healthy, and they did not view us as helpful in that season at all. And then looking back at the very end, the day they moved out, you remember the son came to us and said, thank you.
Yeah, he did.
Thank you so much. And so very, emotional for
it was hard.
those renters. Yeah. And it was challenging. And it was that pain, but they could see past it and say, okay, actually, this is somebody's helping move us past this season of my parents being hoarders. So,
and I will say, we did not ask them to leave.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, they chose to leave. We asked them.
I guess they didn't like us.
Yeah, they didn't. They thought we were evil. But that's okay. It's par for the course. Sometimes,
that's okay.
We were disrupting their pattern. But let's fast forward. We were able to increase rent on that. Their side, the hoarder side, was still 2,500 square feet, but it was only 2-bedroom. For just kind of odd. But we added a wall, added 2 closets, made it into a 3-bedroom, just like our side. And by simply doing that, we immediately increased the rent they were at $700 a month. Mm-hmm. Whenever we released it 8 months later, after they got out and we fixed it up, we rented it for $2,500 a month.
Yep.
And our mortgage at that time was $2,480.
Oh, those are the days.
And that was including PMI.
Right.
And so it was just this holy cow, we're living for free. This is amazing. And granted, there was a lot of maintenance that house needed. It wasn't very well built. It was old. But it was just so cool that by simply taking a property and changing our lens around how we looked at it, because at first it was this is a horrible deal. And we changed lens, we bought it, we bought rent, we fixed it up, rented out, lived on one side for a year and a half. We refinanced it into an investment loan once the rents were increased. And then we did it again. And we moved into another duplex.
Well, and it could qualify differently because we were able to do that. And even another layer of house hack, your sister and brother-in-law lived with us on our side. Mm-hmm. And so we rented a room to them.
For real cheap. I don't even know if we charged them.
I know.
I think they helped us buy
move
beer
5 times and bought us beer. All right, let's move on. So 4th strategy, partnering with someone. Walk the audience through.
Partnering. So this is an option. Partner with somebody. Who is this for? This is for somebody that maybe is pretty good at finding deals. They're like, hey, I know this, for 8th place. I know this is a deal. This is totally a deal, but I don't have the capital or the credit or the job to go or the funds to just go buy this thing. So what you could do is you could partner with somebody that does have the credit, does have the capital, does have the W-2 income, but doesn't have the time to go find a deal or an interest in finding a deal, but they would love owning some property. Mm-hmm. Because you could structure this partnership where the sky's the limits on how you do it. You could do it as they get X amount % of the cash flow, as well as a certain % of the equity. Mm-hmm. You get, more equity, less equity. They get all the tax depreciation. You could just, this is also called the wedge method. You could wedge yourself in some little capacity where it's hey, I'm going to manage the property. I want a little bit of cash flow, but I really want a bigger piece of the pie in the end. I'll give you all the tax depreciation, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It is a little bit higher level. And there's more risk because you're partnering with somebody. Hopefully you know this person.
Right.
I wouldn't suggest partnering with somebody that you just don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and talk through all of the kind of nuances, all the details.
Yeah.
But it really is a great option, especially if you can find a property.
And if you're the one sitting there saying, this is an incredible deal, somebody should buy this. I can't right now because, you just put your funds into something else. You're saving up for a ring, whatever that is. But yeah, being able to go to somebody else as kind of a private equity partner or a private money partner is a great option.
Yep. We see these type of partnerships all the time in our community.
Oh, yeah.
It's very normal.
Yep. Okay, finally, last strategy is utilizing creative financing.
I know. This one, we'll do a podcast on it separately.
We just kind of did.
We did a baby one. It's one that is so broad. Mm-hmm. It's so fun though. It is the strategy that we're using that's so fun because it's creative and man, sky's the limit on how you can do things. But essentially, creative is using seller financing. Maybe a property is owned outright, and the person is happy making some interest payments instead of selling it and having this big tax from selling. They would like to spread that out over time and just collect monthly rent in the form of interest payments. Yeah.
And we just talked about this in a podcast, but one of those options, even I think the audience sits here and says, well, who would do that?
Right.
If you could, yeah, why would you do that? That seems so silly. Well, think about some of our older generations that are on Medicare and Medicaid. if they have a windfall of cash, they lose all their benefits.
Yeah.
And the system is not set up for them to offload that property, and actually be able to tap into the equity. So instead, they hang on to that property and they hang on to it and they hang on to it. And then they become tired landlords and the property gets dilapidated, or somebody else in the family has to inherit it and it's their problem. This is a great option for somebody like that, like a boomer age, maybe. Just throwing it out there.
Or somebody that doesn't want to just get rid of it. They want, or they want this specific price. So like, I want here, even though the market's here, I want this really high price. Well, in a creative finance transaction, you can pay the price because it's not necessarily about the price for, me as the buyer. It's more about the terms of the transaction, which is super cool. There's more levers that you can play with. We bought multiple like this, and we're offering on properties like this all the time.
Yeah. That's
because it's a great way to make a win-win solution.
Yep. So those are our 5 strategies. Move out of your primary, save up for a large down payment, house hack, partner with somebody, or utilize creative financing. Let's move on to advice. So what specific advice would you give to somebody who's like, I'm going to buy my first investment in 2025?
I think the first piece of advice is just pick a strategy. You got to pick, you don't have to pick one. You could focus down on, 2, but a person in general is not going to be all of them. So if I'm just going to save a bunch of money, save, just do it and know that's what you're doing, and you're buying rent or you're buying tax, write-offs or whatever, but pick a strategy and follow that.
I love that. I agree. I mean, trying to learn and act on all 5 at the same time would be challenging.
I mean, like creative, like it's its own strategy and has all these different variances in it. So, I mean, but pick one and know you can do it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing.
What about resources? Every episode, we're trying to leave the audience just with a couple of resources. These are short form podcasts because we are trying to catch you on your commute. And so here are some additional resources you should tap into and go listen to, read about to find out more.
Yep. So I'll give you just a list of several that I like personally.
All right.
Okay. Bigger Pockets, the podcast, on the website, specifically their older stuff with Brandon Turner. I mean, or just go to Brandon Turner. He has, great books out there. He's just a wealth of knowledge. Pace Morby. He is all things creative. He is so great. He's, leader of our community, an incredible human being, great YouTube, so much information out there. So, and then his book, Wealth Without Cash. It's a great book. It's talking all about seller financing and how to do it. And then one of my favorites, it's the old school book. It's the blue book. It's called The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. And before I was an agent, I always loved Gary Keller because of that book. The agent version is the red book. The investor version is the blue book.
Yeah. But even the red book, Millionaire Real Estate Agent, it's got some, it's not really for investors, but it's got some great content.
It does
too.
But the blue book, it's old school, and it's got more of like the first, like 3 or 4, strategies, just move up, buy a house, and move out. It's things like that, but it's very practical, and it's a solid book, but it reads more like a textbook with some stories.
Textbook format, so you're gonna feel like you're in college, like get some popcorn and.
But if for some of those people, like I read that book every year.
I know, it's impressive.
Yep, and it always like it fired up and let's go buy a property.
I know. And I would say, go find somebody ahead of you that's doing this. So there are so many people. There's tons of social media groups, tons of meetups, networking options. Anybody who's gone before you, they are just going to be a wealth of knowledge. I mean, that's us sitting here doing this podcast. Absolutely. So definitely go find somebody if you're in the Denver area. Take Travis to coffee, buy him a 5-shot espresso drink. Awesome. Well, I think that wraps us up. So why don't you tell the audience where they can find you?
Yep. I can be found on all the social medias at the Travis Hall.
And
DM.
That's right. And I can be found on Instagram at the Ingrid Hall. I almost said Ingrid S. Hall. The Ingrid Hall.
Same as mine. All right, cool. And the last question we always ask, what are you yoked to today?
I would say specifically when it comes to purchasing your very first investment, you have to be yoked to telling yourself you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is challenging. You absolutely can do it. Go champion yourself. Tell yourself that every day as an affirmation. That would be what I would be yoked to.
I love it and totally agree. Cool.
Awesome.
All right. That's a wrap. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Yoked Podcast. We hope you enjoyed it.
And as always, be sure to like, subscribe, and follow along as we drop a new episode each week.